What is Yuji's true purpose? Is he a protagonist meant to suffer? Is he a useless main character? Should he just give up and let Gojo handle everything? Whether Yuji wants it or not, it's his destiny to fight Ryoma and Sukuna. We've heard it all before, that Yuji suffers in this story and Gege hates him. But the reason that Yuji is found on the verge of tears every arc, it's not because Gege's sadistic, it's because of who he is as a character. His empathy is why he feels so much pain. Yuji's caring nature of others is a huge plot point in Jujutsu Kaisen, and it is what puts him directly at odds with Sukuna. Sukuna cannot stand Yuji's empathy. He made sure his malevolent shrine killed as many people as he could possibly manage, all in an attempt to break Yuji's soul and make him cry. But the thing about Yuji is, despite all that's happened to him, he never truly broke, and he was always able to maintain control over Sukuna. And despite being at his lowest point in the manga currently, he's now in a position he's never been in the entire series. Ever since Shibuya, Yuji wanted to die and take Sukuna with him, and then have Gojo come out and fix everything. But since when does Yuji get what he wants in this story? Throughout the entire series, we see Yuji's want to help people, but I think it goes deeper than that. I think Yuji might understand the soul better than any other character in Jujutsu Kaisen, given his rivalry with Mahito, and the foreshadowing of Sukuna's weakness being directly linked to his soul. I think that Yuji's true power will be something truly unique to him, and unlike anything we've seen in the series so far. Many people want to think that Yuji will have his moment of being the strongest, or being the honored one. But Yuji calling himself the honored one isn't in his character. He's not one to call himself the strongest, because he doesn't want to be strong for the sake of power. Yuji has always been prepared to die. Achieving all 20 fingers and dying with Sukuna was always his plan, but now he's stuck alive and his best friend stolen. For the first time since Yuji became a sorcerer, biting it isn't going to accomplish anything. And while Kenjaku is responsible for his overwhelming strength and his natural prowess as a sorcerer, there are things even a giant brain can't account for. Kenjaku was surprised when Geto's body fought back against him, and I think the full nature of the body and soul are unknown to Kenjaku. And while Kenjaku is undeniably evil, like most characters in Jujutsu Kaisen, he's multifaceted, and I don't think he's entirely uncaring of Yuji. He saved Yuji's school friends from being murdered in the Culling Games, and even thanked them for spending time with his son. And he was friends with Tengen? Well, it's safe to say that there's more to Kenjaku than just being a giant evil brain. Yuji has been up and coming this entire series. Every bad thing that's happened to him has pushed him closer and closer to his true potential. With all the Buddhist elements in Jujutsu Kaisen, and in Buddhism the end goal is to find nirvana, which is obtained by letting go of your earthly desires and removing your ignorance. We see Yuji's ignorance on full display when he tries to appeal to the empathy of characters like Mahito and Sukuna. We've seen this foreshadowed twice, that Yuji has yet to understand what a curse truly is. And once Yuji finally does understand what a curse is, well, it's a shonen, so he's gonna square up and become a one-man wrecking crew. Yuji has been stuck in the cycle of suffering and rebirth this entire series, but mostly that suffering part. This kid needs a Xanax, but all of it pushes him one step closer to finding true enlightenment. An often overlooked scene that foreshadows Yuji's understanding of the soul is when one of his old classmates who has a crush on him comes to meet him, and she thinks that he won't recognize her because she's lost weight, but he recognizes her immediately, because I guess you could say he sees people for their souls. And when Junpei is killed by Mahito, Yuji was filled with so much righteous anger that he looked like he was about to explode. And we saw a moment similar to this in chapter 214, and we're going to see a moment like this again. Yuji is not allowed to die in this series until he fulfills his purpose. He survived the Great Bageling, and where many think Kenjaku's going to pull something over on Sukuna, he already has. Yuji has always been the checkmate against Sukuna. He is Sukuna's foil, and it is his fight. Yuji and Sukuna are obviously connected on a deeper level than him just being a vessel. I mean, just look at them. They're either literally related, or Gege is drawing parallels. Sukuna hates this kid. He will not give Yuji credit for anything he does. This kid gets back up from being launched across a city, and Sukuna's only response is, "Oh, it's you." The symbolism could not be more on the nose in this scene. Sukuna is literally looking down on Yuji. I wouldn't trust anything this guy has to say about Yuji. Unless it's coming from his own inner narration, his downplay is obvious. The rage inside of Yuji has been building up this entire series. Yuji is the most selfless character in Jujutsu Kaisen and the closest to finding enlightenment alongside Megumi. And don't worry, that video's coming. But we are quickly approaching the climax of Yuji's suffering. Yuji has a reason to live for the first time in the series. Yuji wasn't raised in a world of Jujutsu sorcery. He never wanted to be one in the first place. All he ever wanted to do was help people. And he thought the best way to do that was his own death. But with Sukuna being free, what was once an internal conflict has become an external one. And for the first time, Yuji has a true reason to become stronger. But Yuji's beating ass potential has never been one he trained for. His greatest power-ups come from his emotional conflict. If you're a villain in shonen, you don't get away with roasting a protagonist like this and leaving them alive. The body and soul has so much foreshadowing around it in Jujutsu Kaisen, and this is also highly likely to be linked to Sukuna's weakness, with things like his finger not healing completely, and the soul has come more and more into the story as it's gone on, and Yuji's specialty seems to be in the soul as far as we can tell. And while someone like Sukuna may have found power in having a complete disregard for others, I think Yuji's power will come from his empathy for others, because love is the greatest curse. We see this in things like Yuta pulling his friend's soul back to the world because he didn't want them to die. Someone as stuffed into hedonism as Sukuna, and as far from detachment from earthly desires as possible, no wonder Sukuna's soul is probably his weak point. All he cares about is the physical world. If you want to get really deep into foreshadowing, Sukuna has already been punched right in the soul by Yuji. A lot of people are waiting on Yuji to get a curse technique, and while I think he will, I think his curse technique might be related to the soul, in a similar way to Mahito. With how in-depth Gege goes into the abilities of characters in this series, Yuji's being uncomplicated seems unlikely. But Yuji's true fate lies in beating Sukuna's ass. I do not think there is much point in power scaling these characters right now. There is clearly something cooking for both of them, and their backstories are obviously linked in some way. Another thing is, Yuji doesn't necessarily have to be the strongest character in the series to be the best character to fight Sukuna. The same way that Yuji was Mahito's natural enemy, he could be Sukuna's as well. And considering that he was given like the best baby formula ever since birth, and expressly created to be a pain in the ass for Sukuna, I don't see this being unlikely at all. And that's the beauty of curse techniques in general, is that it's not always a one-to-one power level scale. Some techniques could be amazing against one person and completely worthless against another. The core conflict of Jujutsu Kaisen lies with Yuji, Megumi, and Sukuna, about whether nirvana is found by having a complete disregard for others or having an overwhelming compassion for them. There is no world where Yuji and Sukuna can exist with each other without conflict. And whether Yuji is related to Sukuna or not, I made another video on that, and the references to twins go deep into Jujutsu Kaisen, and the major inspirations for characters like Sukuna in this story. This is pure speculation from me, but Sukuna does kind of treat Yuji like he's his punk brother. Now, whether or not Yuji is actually the reincarnation of someone like Sukuna's brother, we just don't know. I think that would be an interesting plotline for Gege to go down if they decided to, by Sukuna being an incarnated person and Yuji being a reincarnated person. Because not only does Yuji being a direct copy of somebody not necessarily line up with the story, I feel it would take a little bit away from his character's uniqueness. The one thing is for certain is that Yuji and Sukuna will throw hands again in the story. After Yuji's survival and semi-awakening in Chapter 214, Yuji is pretty much guaranteed to beat this dude's ass. If Yuji didn't have the major fight against Sukuna, he should have just died here. Does anybody actually think that Yuji's character arc ends in fighting a giant brain? Like what, is Yuji gonna wrap his fist and say, "It's patricide time"? I know I've only talked to you once in this entire series, but you're my final obstacle. And that's the beauty of Jujutsu Kaisen. The characters come in and out of the story in a natural way, and they don't feel arc-specific. Unless you're Naoya, then you're like a little turd human. Sukuna has been a problem since day one, and he's the biggest problem he's ever been. And that's why this all feels like such a great narrative payoff. The conversation around Jujutsu Kaisen skyrocketed after Chapter 213. And of course it did, because the major villain of the series finally made his move. But as a great hero once said, when we were at our lowest point, we were open to the greatest change, Shanks, Avatar, Way of Water. And Yuji is rapidly approaching his lowest point. And when he does, he's got it from here. But that's just my opinion. I want to hear yours, so let me know what you think of Yuji's power up in the comments below. And as of making this video, I've hit 3,000 subscribers, which is an insane number to me, so thank you to each and every one of you. And there's plenty more anime content on the way. And if you aren't subscribed and you like videos like this, subscribe for more. And as always, thanks for watching.